Constructionist podcast, where we take ancient stories, the person of Jesus, current events and topics, and help you construct a new Christian worldview that's relevant and loving to those around you. I'm your host, Kevin Bates. I'm a semiotician and community builder looking at the signs of the times to build a better future together. You are tuned into the Constructionist podcast, and tonight we are giving just basic thoughts on what we've learned this week. Sharia has a topic, Jake has a topic, and I have a topic, and we're just going to go for it tonight in an open thinking space and material that each one of us have studied separately, but we're just going to come together and have a discussion. Now, at the Constructionists, we encourage a worldview that is built on the principles of Christ. And in this episode, we are going to examine 3 different topics through a clear and honest lens. Now, by doing so, we hope to offer insights. We hope to offer perspectives that if you face these topics, you will be able to expand your own journey towards a greater understanding through love and compassion for yourself and others. So we want to assure you that we're not making and fabricating up anything in this episode, as many have done in theology about information and ideas and coming from different perspectives. They're not necessarily perspectives. They're just fake ideas. So we're not giving fake ideas tonight. Our goal is to provide an honest and authentic perspective in our examination. So this is our thinking space where we're presenting some topics, and tonight we're making our best attempt to explain theology to live by. So if you enjoy the Constructionist podcast and want to support us financially, please follow the link in the chat or show notes on the social media platform you're listening to and visit our Give page. You can support us through our Patreon page at the Constructionists, and your support will enable us to continue producing high quality content like this. But more importantly, we want to hear from you, engage with you. We believe that through interactions and discussions with listeners like you, we can continue to learn and grow together. So we value your feedback, questions, ideas, and we're excited to build a community around the shared exploration, what we call a communal hermeneutic. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know what you think. All right, Sharia, Jake, welcome. Thanks for joining. We took a couple of weeks off and now we're back at it with just some general topics, because we've had actually a couple of weeks where we ended Easter, we got through Easter, we ended Lent, we ended Holy Week, we got to the other side, we were able to eat sugar again and chocolate, and we get to the other side, and now we spent a couple of weeks just thinking about different things to talk about. We've learned some things, we've read some things, and we just want to share 3 totally disconnected ideas that have really no relationship with one another besides the relationship that the 3 of us share across this screen. That's it. So Shreya, bring up the first topic. We did some pre-work, so we know what it is. We have some things to ask you about it, but hopefully this is a rich conversation on your topic. So go for it.
Yeah. So this week I went back and re-listened to an old podcast episode. And it was an interview with an author by the name of Devin Price. And Devin Price wrote a book called Laziness Does Not Exist.
This wasn't our podcast, though, correct?
Correct.
I don't remember doing that. Got it. Okay.
No, I don't go back and listen to our old episodes. That feels weird.
You just move on. Laziness does not exist. Now, when you first said that, it hit me wrong, because I'm like, well, laziness does exist. But tell me why it doesn't exist.
So the idea is that laziness is more often an expression of an unmet need. So when we as being lazy, it's really easy to write it off as a character flaw. They're just a bad person. But if we view laziness as an invitation for us to support the other person. So it's both a relationship into, or an invitation into relationship, which is really doesn't let us off the hook for just dismissing that person as flawed.
Got it. So
Mm-hmm.
laziness or real, or is laziness a response, right?
Or is laziness not that
Right.
are culturally accepted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the interview went on to talk about how and
Mm-hmm.
people work for maybe 4 to 5 hours of their 8 hour workday.
Okay.
And there's tons into trying to make people more productive so that they're actually using all 8 of those hours. But if that's not what humans are designed systems that actually work with how humans really function.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So maybe
So,
it's that is creating the perception.
right.
The system around the person that's not meeting a need creates a perception of laziness. Is that am I getting it?
Yeah. And not doing anything because we feel like we're supposed to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I our function, and all of us, no matter who we are, sometimes we get into the rut of so laziness many times is a self-identified, you know, feeling, I guess.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
And
But
sometimes
what
I
feels
think it can
different about that lazy is a judgment.
true, true. I mean, I guess I said that lighter than like analyzing those things together. So like punch in, what I meant was we get into the rut of feeling feelings, and maybe that's the judgment. I'm not matching up. I'm not doing enough. Our neurotransmitters, what is happening when we get into those, I guess, other functioning or dysfunctional kind of states of mind?
Time that's necessary for healthy brain function and for creative problem solving. So even if our brain isn't like on
Mhm.
100%,
Does
I
the
think
interview also talk about like neurodivergent folks that are often termed deemed lazy because
it doesn't. But what is kind of interesting, so I believe it was after publishing this book, the author was then diagnosed with autism, um,
okay.
and all of that. So more to come.
Mhm. So maybe the motivation of the book or his first research was
Yeah, they
yeah.
do share a story of being a workaholic and being one of those people who really thrives in hyper productivity so for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
right. So there are, I think, chemicals in well, you have dopamine,
Mm-hmm.
which helps us to feel uh like motivated to like a desire to pursue to a chemical, adrenaline chemical definitely is that chemical of endurance. And so I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember who wrote the book Endure, but it makes me think of that, just the endurance that we are when like the world is, like crashing around us, whatever that looks like for the individual's world that's crashing around them. Um, or if like, person like almost in an
Mm-hmm.
agitation, that leads to endurance. Like I got to get this done. I got to get this done. Then you got serotonin, which makes us feel. Then the focus, the acetylcholine, the focus chemical of trying to stay focused on the goal. Things, right? Um, where you can have your opinion on whether that's like what your opinion is on it. I'm not going to look at research, um, and what the research tells me. And when I read research about it, I just wonder, like, since we're another person is diagnosed with depression, I've seen some people go in with just a lack of motivation, and then they're diagnosed with depression. or somebody goes in and and all of those around them could be seen as the judgment call of like, well, you're lazy,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's so many studies right now. I wish we would timing, light. I'm sure Andrew Huberman has a few things to say about this, but light and sunlight, and just I think that there might be a lot of that going on as well that complicates the discussion.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you're absolutely the conclusion to that, an unmet need. After
Or is it just,
talking about it with
just
you, I think
different than the Western ideal of
Right.
productivity? I think there's more than
Yeah.
just they don't want to produce
Right.
like our Protestant experiment says they need to. What is financial success? And so,
well, in some cultures, people looking from the outside, it's like, do you work 8 hours a day? Type of thing. But the idea of that is that that they're working into the night
even
too,
the idea of
Right.
8 hours,
because they're just working day and night. They just take
Right.
shorter breaks through the day.
yeah.
When I
What
was
is that
younger,
then?
I was in a foreign country. I was in a very unknown place. I would get behind people on like in the streets and stuff, and they would just walk really slow. And I just asked the family that I was really slow. And I just couldn't like believe, like it just felt like, it's like, don't you have places to go and people just, all right. So the question that I have right now is the next topic that we're going over. We've all received these emails. We've all received letters. Why is it? This is my first question, because Jake's bringing up the topic of, I don't know what the topic is yet that he's actually going to bring up. But one of our friends received an email. Why is it that Christians need to write letters to get their opinion in the face of others? Is that a human thing or is that a Christian thing? Because I don't see human beings in general just sitting down. I see them tweeting little, brain farts.
I think
But I
depending
don't-
on if it's academia, I think that yes, there are essays and responses
Yeah.
written.
I do think it's a human thing, because if you go to the comment section of any somewhat controversial anything, you just see the same stuff.
Who is the
It's
pen
not
is
extra
mightier than
special
the
in
sword?
Christianity.
What?
Who
It's not
wrote- who-
extra special in Christianity. You don't think?
I don't think so, but I do think within Christianity there is an increased pressure to police our own behavior and everyone else's. So maybe.
I think we have keyboard warriors now,
Yes.
which is a full spectrum. The idea that the pen is mightier than the sword, which comes from the 1800s, which is not that old, but back and forth. Like if you go back to like Luther and nailing of the theses, that was a common practice, was to nail your topics on the door to talk about them. And so the idea of writing complaint, now you have Yelp and all that
Yeah.
crap. Like no one cares about your opinion
About this cafe or
of
restaurant
your
or
burger. Just leave them
this is-
alone.
move on from. I know you had a bad burger, but just
And
move
it's
on.
fine. As somebody with a good standing Yelp review, leave the small businesses alone. Just let them
Just let
leave
it
good
lie.
reviews. Anyways,
Okay, so bring us the topic. Like somebody received a letter that we know that made us all mad, and we're just like,
so we're going to talk about some of the ideas within that letter, but I think an idea of the letter is to posture yourself like a rooster, and it's called like cocky, or And so you're gonna, but it's called something. I cannot think of the word right now. But like posing as smarter or bigger or more intelligent, just so that the other person will feel so stupid they won't know how to respond. So you're immediately the expert.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start digging through the letter and you find holes and you find where they're wrong. You find things that they plagiarize from other people. You find just
It's a word salad.
It's a word salad of posturing yourself to try to be better or holier or bigger, and it's just so unnecessary.
But I did have a friend, just to interrupt a little bit, I did have a friend that received a letter once that somebody had taken. It was an anonymous letter. Now, this letter that was received wasn't anonymous, so that's good. But this letter was an anonymous letter criticizing something that he was doing, and he was a pastor, and so it was one of the congregation members. They had taken magazines and they had clipped out letters out of
Creepy.
the magazines like a psycho, right? Like literally like a serial killer type person. They pasted this letter together with the magazines, right? With letters, and basically condemning
Like
this pastor to hell,
Saw
false
Church or what?
teacher. Yeah, it's like,
Jeez.
yeah, literally
Well, it
like
takes
Saw
so much
5.
time.
So much time.
Who has the
He
energy
received
for
this
this?
letter. He actually preserved it, laminated it.
Oh, framed it.
He thought that he had like reached some upper,
Arrived.
crusty
Yeah,
level
wow.
of life because he had received this letter. He thought he was just, like, this is my Magna Carta. He's like, anyway.
Going back to this letter we're talking about, this email. It was a man writing to a woman.
Yes.
And so you already
Of
have
course
this
it was.
play.
Right.
You already have this play of hierarchy, and the letter basically is why his opinion is the biblically historical viewpoint
Mm-hmm.
of and homosexuality.
Right.
Is the main thing. And for some reason, Christians, especially conservative ones, are really focused on sex. Sorry, that's just where they're at. And so reading through that letter, I don't think I agree with any of his points. All of them are a normal argument to make. They just come from a position of hate instead of love. I think we should say that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have 5 questions that I come up with from reading this article, and I hope that the receiver of this letter can listen to this and think about some things, because we haven't talked to them about that. We're even doing this right now, so hope it goes okay.
We're not using names. We're not using
No.
context. None of that. Yeah.
So the first idea is there such a thing as a gay agenda? Oftentimes especially Christian nationalists will talk about the nefarious and dark musings of homosexuals to get their way in life, like taking over the American Psychological Association, so that the DSM will no longer call homosexuality gender dysphoria or transism gender. Is there such a thing as a gay agenda?
So are we answering
Absolutely
that?
not. I mean,
Together,
Is
we're
that
not
the
talking-
open question?
That's the first question. I have 5.
Okay.
the gay agenda is to live.
Okay.
Well, I think there is a gay agenda, and it's different than what like a conservative Christian would call the gay agenda. A conservative Christian would say that the gay agenda is to get a conservative Christian to agree and affirm and just say gay is okay and like write it into law.
Okay.
Right? Let's simplify it like that. I would say that the gay agenda is to be treated as a human being and equal and a recipient of all rights, just like anybody else, and they're human being. And so, like, for example, gay marriage. The moment that marriage went into a civil or a societal norm that was accepted, you could be non-Christian and be married, you could be Buddhist and be married, you could be, in the United States, right? You could be any religion and be married, you could be non-religious and be married. As soon as that went into, let's call that the secular world, that Christianity would call the secular world, as soon as marriage, like in the United States, was deemed okay by multiple parties, that probably happened, right at the beginning. You can't refuse that from people.
Everyone.
You have to be,
especially if there's taxation purpose put behind
and
it.
law. It's a law,
And
right? So I think that the gay agenda, from my perspective, and what my position of what I think I would advocate for and have advocated for with people is that all people be treated equal under the law.
here it's often that in the gay marriage trend that marriage is a Christian institution.
It's not true.
That's never been true.
No.
Right.
And it's only because we want to be able to define it. It isn't there. Marriage in every culture, in time, not all the time.
And it's like a lot of different things.
It's like a lot of things.
Me, what I said about gender is that a reasonable look at that, or because I understand, and sure you might be able to speak to this more as you're with actual practice. I think that is quality practices, then we have historically and currently marginalized large groups of people in our society. So it needs to be actionable practices engaged in order to help people receive equal and be able to live life equally under the United States.
Is there
No matter what I just said, please look at that and act equality as there needs to be equitable practices.
right? Yeah.
nothing else really that Jesus did by ushering in and love or accomplishment. Sin is forgiven. Sin was forgiven. Uh, and, and I would say evil, the chances of evil for that idea that how have power over us was destroyed. So this idea, one of the works Jesus brought in, part of his greater purpose, really after the all people and the one thing that in a metaphor sense, okay, so look at Jesus and Jesus the literal sense, but would be the it was metaphor, right? Metaphor beautiful that all that bounds to other, that all of the law are captive, they're enslaved, or all of these people in their hearts, minds can now live life, in Christ. So part of this thing captive free, all that forgiveness, part of it is establishing covenant and the law of love. So these gave these I am statements. I the way true life is, Jesus lived so we didn't have to. Jesus lived so we knew how to. And Jesus gave us a way, a truth of life. And that's how we live. So not only did he give us covenant, God did he give us, he set us free, but he also gave us a way of life. I think the problem I find with the letter comes some out in what he pursues in. And he's down that trail. Yet Jesus actually was one that walked to the individual and called him in.
Yes. The idea of the main purpose, and it was to create life as a space. We'll say that way. That wherever you are, safe space around, no matter if that person that needs the safe space is in sin or not. Our job is not to call them out, judge, or even convict them. We talk about the Holy Spirit's main job is that, and that's not yours. So just love them, let them be. The story I go back to, especially with this topic, is Jesus healing his Syrian boy. And in the story, Centurion comes up, says his boy is his slave, the word slave, is fallen ill, and he would like his slave to be healed, that he has faith that Jesus can do that. It says, Jesus says, your faith is better than anyone else's, basically. Your slave has been healed, go. A real rendering of the word would be my male sex slave that I have, this child has fallen ill. And nowhere to say, don't go anymore. I will heal you because you're in sin. You need to completely eradicate from your life. And to care of the emotion first, take care of the person, and other day maybe different. What I got.
Well, I think that we have a lot to learn about how to treat people. Whether listen right now agrees or not with the theology of like a conservative Christian sexual, what they call sexual ethics. Whether you agree with that or not, right? We're going to have to figure out as Christians how to love people despite our views of their behavior. Because 10 years or 20 years from now, there's going to be a new behavior that's new and can't, what do we do now? And so that's part of the challenge here, is that Christians have never been good at treating people as human beings, not as objects. The moment that we can treat people as human beings, I think the moment that is like a breakthrough moment. It's like a Jesus breakthrough. That, wow, we're going to treat the person at the well, and we're going to treat the person that's on the ground. We're going to treat the paralytic man. We're going to treat, the person with skin disease, and we're going to treat all these people with just respect and human being, and help them establish, like Shreya said, help them in the community. And there were lots of views of people's behavior back then. Jesus walked around and just purely loved people. And we're to model that in our lives. So I looked at this letter and I looked at what happened with that. And it just shows a huge lack of grace. It shows a huge lack of love. And honestly, we can't use people in service for people. I don't know what we're going to use to minister to people if we can't figure out how to use people. This is one of the reasons why the evangelical church is what some people say is in crisis, but the numbers are just dropping so dramatically. It's because we just can't figure out how to love people, and that's unfortunate. It's really unfortunate that we're there. And
keep running out good people.
What?
Keep running out good people.
Oh, we just keep running off people like left and right. And I think I read this.
Emails.
What?
Stop sending emails.
Right. It does say in the Bible that if you think somebody has sinned against you, you go to them and sit down with them and have a conversation. So I think that our going back to letter writing, I think that letter writing, we can attack people and from a distance, and it seems easier and creates much damage. That email is very damaging. I think shows a huge lack of grace, lack of love, lack of mercy. There's just nothing in it that speaks forgiveness or any form of like you're a human being. Let's start there. There's nothing like that in the email. Yeah. All right. Well, let's go over the last topic. We got about 10 more minutes, so I do want to talk about this. Months and months ago, one of the musicians at our church came to me with this YouTube video, and he says, "Hey, have you seen this YouTube video? It's called Satan's Guide to the Bible." And I just looked at it. I didn't think anything of it. I saw that it was an hour and 45 minutes, and I was like, wow, that's a long video. I haven't got time for that. I opened it up. I didn't even look at it besides starting to listen to it, right? And it brought up some arguments and such, and then I never went back to it, right? I had talked about those arguments before. We had unpacked those on this podcast before, and so it was kind of like, it wasn't old news, but it was just kind of rehashing some things. Anyway, so I'm on one of the social media channels here recently, a handful of months ago, or a month ago, I guess now, and pops up Satan and Satan's Guide to the Bible. I don't know if we have a picture of it or not, Jake, if you wanted to show that picture. But it's just called it's a YouTube video called Satan's Guide to the Bible. And I looked a little closer and I went, oh my goodness, That is so funny. So I had a friend or a classmate in high school by the name of Zeke Bystrip. He's the producer of Satan's Guide to the Bible. We were in the same class together. We were in high school together and such, part of junior high. And anyway, so Zeke was Zeke. Zeke, I think, came from a kind of a family of producers or music and such. And so he has kind of been in this vein for a long time. And he was the one that produced the video of Harold Camping. He got an exclusive video with Harold Camping, the guy that predicted the end of the world. And we're still here. So Harold Camping and Zeke Peicher did an exclusive documentary of the life after the prediction and why these things happen. Anyway, his interest has been in a lot of just church or theology or the drama around church. I've seen some different things from him over the years about church. Anyway, Satan's Guide to the Bible. It has actually reached 1.1 plus million views on YouTube. It is kind of going viral. And what I also find interesting is Satan's Guide to the Bible has gotten a lot of feedback. The rebuttals have been very interesting to watch. And so this is how the documentary goes. Satan's Guide to the Bible is basically like, you just think the title, it's like, oh my goodness, what could this be about? It is I think a surprisingly funny video. I found it funny.
It's very funny.
It was kind of lighthearted. It was very lighthearted to the complexities of the Bible, mostly the composition of the Bible. And so Satan is actually, it's a very like familiar old school scene where we have these children, and these children are there for Sunday school and their teacher is out sick or gone or whatever. So the substitute teacher comes in and the substitute teacher is Satan, right? And so Satan starts teaching Sunday school. You can see that Satan is this like debonair looking guy with, he's like in his 50s or whatever, sitting there teaching these kids about the Bible. Now, does it feel a little creepy? Yes, we have these kids in Sunday school with Satan. And so I think that was on purpose to make it feel creepy because the church has been creepy. And
but the kids look angry except for a couple of them, which is funny.
Yes. Yeah. So they're very, this contingency, I don't know if they're a homeschool contingency or whatever, but they only have learned this historical version of the Bible, that the Bible is actually a historical document, right? And so he is breaking down the historicity or the thought that the Bible is this historical account of how the world or how the history of the world kind of played out. And it doesn't get necessarily bogged down, I don't think, in theological complexity. It definitely is funny. It's lighthearted. But I think that it does a couple of things, which I'm really proud of Zeke for doing it, because he does bring up complexities of the Bible that most people are not talking about today. He brings up some things that I have studied for years that I'm like, wow, you actually brought these to the forefront. I don't have challenges talking about the things that he was talking about in front of congregations of people. He does talk about inerrancy and how inerrancy is just kind of what I would say is it's just a fake doctrine. It's not even
inerrancy is errant.
Right. And so he does bring up inerrancy. He does bring up things that we have in this podcast, like Exodus doesn't have any archaeological evidence around it, right?
The conquest, or David.
Or the conquests, or, going into the promised land, or Abraham. Was Abraham this actual person? Was it a concept? Where he doesn't go, which, it's a video. It had a purpose. It's an hour and 45 minutes long, but he only had an hour and 45 minutes. So he could have probably added another, 10 hours of material to the video.
This is
If
our
he
like
talked about the
170th podcast, so we have 170 hours if he wants to go for it.
or more into these kinds of concepts. So he's just trying to, like, I guess, nudge people, like push people into more of an understanding. I have no idea where his faith is. I don't know if he believes in God. He's agnostic, atheist, whatever. Um, it does feel like a little bit. So the critique that I have of it, and maybe it's for just length of video. When you're bringing up complex theological arguments, there's I would say more complex answers to complex arguments, and there are other arguments that are around it. Now, I would say that the historical argument doesn't carry a lot of water. So, so if you're just battling the historical argument that the Bible is a piece of history and all these things happened, um, that's pretty easy to break down in an hour and 45 minutes. But I do think that there's a little more nuance to the complexities, to the composition of the Bible. The jumps, I guess to say, because it didn't historically happen, the Exodus is not a real story, or to actually like make that jump that almost it doesn't matter. I would say that there's lots of literature that we have that we consider sacred, that are not historical, yet they really do matter. So the jump of just because something's historical and what people have done with it and abused people with it, I think we need to be very careful to make that jump to, okay, it doesn't matter and the Bible is just a bunch of bunk, and that kind of stuff. Because I actually agree with a lot of what he said about Bible composition. Uh, and that it wasn't like necessarily written by a single author, that it was written over a long period of time, and it wasn't even written by the people that it said, like Mark didn't write Mark and Matthew didn't write Matthew, those kinds of things. And so we all kind of agree with that here on this podcast, and we understand that. Yet I think I'm going to go back to what Pete Enns said a long time ago. Is he said, I think it's time to stop arguing and hammering what the Bible is versus what the Bible does.
Mm-hmm.
And what the Bible is, I think, is a beautiful narrative, is a beautiful story. It has a lot of spiritual meaning, application. It has a lot of pointing, like it points me to different realities about God, and about the divine in general. But to try to like make that carry more water or make that carry more weight in my life, I have to make it a historical accounting. I think that just breaks down for me. But the Bible still does matter a lot to me. Um, what he does, I guess, is uh, he does break down some very traditional evangelical thoughts, and I think it's really important. I'm not an evangelical. My movement is not traditionally seen as evangelical. So I don't have some of these evangelical thoughts. So when I listen, or you listen to the rebuttal to Satan's guide to the Bible, um, I would say most of those people are trying to defend a position that they've taken in evangelicalism. And now, there is one thing, though. There is one thing. I learned most of these things after seminary. So, Zeke, if you ever listen to this, here you go. You said in the video, or your producer said in the video, that pastors are here trying to keep secrets. Um, I would push back a little bit on that and say most pastors in the circles that I've run in evangelicalism wouldn't even know how to address the topics that you're bringing up. Many, 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 many pastors didn't learn some of those concepts, didn't know some of those concepts, because in seminary, depending on what seminary you go to, they usually only teach or the academic curriculum only revolves around their version or their ideas of it. So if you go to a Calvinistic school, you're going to get their version of Calvinism, and then all the other things, kind of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to get like a heavy version of Calvinism and then a sprinkle in the other. So just like I went to seminary, and some of the things that I learned from Jürgen Moltmann or Brueggemann, Walter Brueggemann, about the things that Zeke you're talking about in this video, that that uh that I learned some of those things, but I went to a school that was open to talking about those things more. And so there are many pastors, I think, don't know some of these things, and they're not educated. Now, is that an excuse? Absolutely not, because we have a world of information that we can tap into, and people are seeing the smoke that is before them and the mirrors that they have been played tricks with, that all of a sudden they're waking up because they Googled something and they find out a completely different version than their past. So I think that Satan's Guide to the Bible, for me, is good job, Zeke, for waking up a whole group of pastors that needed to be woken up to start addressing some of the things that you're talking about here. So I actually appreciated it. I liked it. I thought it was funny. It was entertaining. It was an entertaining exploration of some of these things. It was produced well, getting a lot of feedback. It's getting a lot of criticism, which, you start listening to it and you go, wow. Like, I highly respect some of the theologians and the biblical scholars that he put on the video. But yeah, so that's Satan's Guide to the Bible. That's what I kind of dug around with this week, and I appreciated the hour and a half or whatever it was. So any thoughts on what I brought up?
I mean, hopefully it just pushes people to read content outside of or ingest content, not
Yeah.
read it, but ingest content out of their normal sphere of influence. And I think that we have buckets that we go back to just because it's safe and feels like home.
Yeah.
But step into a different pool one day.
And
Yeah.
in good faith, and not for the purpose of trying to prove it wrong,
Yeah.
but to actually
Yeah.
listen to the argument, try it on for a few hours, see how it fits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless your way of learning it is to prove it wrong and then come back to it again.
Try to prove it wrong, try to rip it apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And hopefully have a humble posture when you're there.
Yeah. I think that the deconstruction that I've gone through over the last handful of years of some of these things that Satan's Guide to the Bible brings up, hell, inerrancy, did Exodus happen? Did the flood happen? The apocalyptic nature of the New Testament, all of that. Did that destroy, or did I lose my faith? There's a lot of people who have, and there's a lot of people who, and I read like under the comments of Satan's Guide to the Bible, under the YouTube comments, I read a lot of comments that people had deconstructed to atheism. They deconstructed to just walking away from, quote, faith. And I think that's a bummer. That's a real bummer, because my deconstruction has pressed me in more to a God that I more understand and can understand. And it's pressed me in more to loving God even deeper and having actually a more sensitive nature to people, and more loving nature to people, versus just trying to keep intact a version. And it's made me very open in front of people to talk about that, and people have appreciated that for the most part. I think some people that can't handle certain things, they can't handle it, and they, find other churches, I guess.
That's
But
okay.
and that's okay. Um, but to actually talk about deconstruction in front of people and to talk about, well, okay, here's the reality of these stories. Uh, but what can we garner from the stories? What can we get
Hmm.
from these stories? I think that the nature of and the beauty of the story of Jonah is a lot greater than some historical value of Jonah. And so I think that spending time in those spaces, I think, is rich and good and actually helpful. So um, that's no secret in our church. There's no Bible secrets in our church, I don't think. Um, but as I find out more, if I discover a new Bible secret, I'll definitely share it with the congregation. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Satan's Guide to the Bible. I really would one day like a conversation with Zeke Pystrip about it, because I think that we could have kind of a good conversation about the different concepts,
Hmm.
because we do align on a lot of them. All right. I think that's what we have time for. And any other concluding thoughts on anything? We talked about laziness isn't a thing. We talked
Laziness,
about,
letters, and Satan's Guide to the Bible.
yeah, there we go. Jeez. Well, those are the things that we just kind of went through over the last couple of weeks, and especially this last week. And we wanted to talk about them with you openly. So if you have any comments, share them with us. We want to engage with you. Any thoughts on what we shared, we welcome them. Anything that you are exploring, we're going to put some links in the show notes to help direct you to some of the things that we are talking about. And so thanks for joining me, Shreya and Jake, in this conversation. And with that, good night, everybody.